And now Petrosian goes for e4, which looks weird at first glance because he is giving up a straight pawn to black. But let's see what will happen if black captures on e4. Let's suppose if knight takes e4, now comes rook to e1, attacking the knight as well as activating the rook. And after this knight goes back and which is also targeting the bishop, simply bishop to b3. And here now black can either capture the pawn or maybe he can just push c4. And let's suppose if c4, then only outpost is this c2 square, and knight to c6, knight to c3, and you know this game will continue like this. Black will now go for castle, knight to e5, white can advance, and giving this knight a strong outpost. And if knight takes e5, d takes e5, attacking the knight, knight to f5. Okay, now queen to e2, targeting the pawn. And if black defends by, let's suppose, b5, now comes bishop takes f5, e takes f5, and after that rook to d1, attacking the queen. And after this, queen goes to c7, knight to d5, and you can see white is doing great. But after the move e4, okay, so let me go back. Yup, so after this move, here basically Sherwin decides to just capture on d4 by c takes d4. And after that, white just pushed a strong move, kicking in the knight as well as gaining the space. And finally, Petrosian just captures on d4 with the queen developing with tempo. And after that, here James goes for a strong move, knight to c5. He attacks the queen and the bishop, which is really a good move. And since this queen is attacked, so that's why just queen to e2. And now for black, it's better to just bring the bishop to e7 so that he can castle, or maybe black can also go for bishop to b7, targeting this, this strong diagonal. But instead, he decides to capture the bishop by knight takes b3. And the problem with that move is after a takes b3, and first of all, it looks good for black because of this double pawn structure, but guys, this also gives an open a file to the rook. Okay, so knight to c3, preparing for knight to e4. And now bishop to e7. Finally, black is deciding to castle. Okay, so after castling, and guys, this is the point from where the game goes interesting. Firstly, Petrosian brings his a rook on c1, pinning the knight, or we can say restricting the activity of the knight. And in the next move, white is going to also cover this d file. So to stop this, firstly he goes for rook at a goes to d8, covering this file so that white can't enter the rook. And after that, rook to c3. And guys, that's a futuristic move. He lifts the rook to the third rank, and he is now ready to shift it to the king side in the future. But guys, instead of the move rook to c3, here is a move which white can also consider, which is even crazier. I mean, after rook to d8, here white can go for this amazing move, knight to d6, attacking the bishop. But guys, that's not the idea. The idea is that since this knight on d6 looks dangerous, black will obviously capture this knight by bishop takes d3, d6, and after e takes d6. And since this queen is attacked, so let's suppose if this queen goes to let's suppose on a5, now comes rook at f goes to d1, and in the next move white is going to push, and let's suppose if queen to b4, queen to e3, and you can see this position will be better for white. And here another move which black can play after the move bishop takes d6, which is the move after takes. Okay, so after this, which is queen to d7, which and basically here black is acting as a blockade for the d pawn. But guys, now I have a question for you. Just look at the position of this queen. I mean, now where is this queen is going? Because this e7 and c7 squares are already covered by the pawn, and guys, that's really amazing. Okay, so in the actual game, after rook to c3, yeah, so basically after this move, queen to b8, he simply first of all unpins the knight, and now Petrosian goes for queen to e3, and after that he just slides the king to h8, getting the king off the diagonal and avoiding any potential checks. And here Petrosian goes for the move knight to d6. He basically jumps into the heart of black position, targeting the bishop on b7. But guys, let me go back to the move king to h8. Here Petrosian missed something crazy. In this position, the best move for white is to go for knight at f goes to g5. The idea is to sacrifice the knight on h7 and then giving a check from this square. And let's suppose if black tries to attack this knight by h6, and I know most of you will definitely thinking about the move queen to h3, pinning the h-pawn and maintaining the pressure. But guys, in reality this is losing, because yes, white is creating some pressure, but as you can see, there is no follow-up. I mean, there is no way for white to continue the attack. And now black will firstly go for the move knight to d4 with the idea of knight to e2 check. And here the best move for white is to go for queen to h5, which maintains the pressure as well as also eyes on the e2 square. And let's suppose if and yeah, basically rook to e3 is also fine, but let's suppose if white defends this check by rook to e1. And now I just want you all to pause the video and try to find the winning move for black. And I think most of you got the move. Yes, you are right, the move is to give a check, however, by knight to e2. And basically idea is simple, because if takes, now you can see this back rank, so check this, and yeah, boom, game over. And so let me go back to the move h6. Yep. So basically here the correct move for white is to go for, and I think you can't guess the move, but if you guess the move knight to h7, then congratulations, you are a genius. This is because after king takes h7, and basically we are doing this so that we can open the king. And now again, I just want you all to pause the video and try to find the next crazy move which white can play. And guys, the move is to sacrifice the another knight by knight to f6 check. And guys, here the best move for black is to not capture this knight, but instead to just bring the king back to h8, because if black decides to capture this knight by the pawn, now comes queen to h3, targeting on h6, which black can't defend. And let's suppose if this game continues like rook to h8, so that he can, he can get escape, but there is no way to escape, because after queen takes h6 check, king to g8, and yes, you are right, this is simply a mate. Okay, so in the actual game, after knight to d6, yep, let me go back. Here after this move, black just goes for knight to b4, threatening for this fork. But before that he just captures on b7, queen takes b7, and again you can see what black is going to play. But guys, Petrosian has no fear in his eyes. Instead of defending, he just goes for bishop to g5. He is threatening to just capture. Okay, so now rook to c6, which is a powerful move, and basically this rook invades the 6th rank, attacking the pawn on a6 and putting serious pressure on black position. And after that, queen to b4, asking for queen exchange, and here white can consider simply knight to g5, which threatens mate on h7, but instead he goes for queen to c2. He just defends on b3. Okay, so here basically Sherwin goes for knight to e7, and guys, that's not a good outpost for the knight. Instead, the move knight to f6 might be the better option, which targets the queen on e4, and obviously white can't capture on f6 due to this undefended rook. So basically black can take just benefit of this. And now just basically he just captures on a5, rook at a goes to d8, rook to a7, and for black it's better to just go for queen to f5, trying to just exchange the queens, because let's suppose if queen takes f5, knight takes f5, rook at 1 goes to a4, knight to d4, and suddenly you can see the pressure on black is now just decreasing. Rook takes d4, rook to b7, targeting the pawn, rook to d2, and suddenly you can see black is back in the game. But after rook to a7, yep, let me go back. Here black makes an inaccuracy by rook at f goes to e8, and the problem with that move is after rook to b7, now no one can defend this pawn on b4. King to g8, and that's another mistake by black, and now the move rook to a7 is just winning. But Petrosian missed that, and he just decided to capture on b4 by queen takes b4, and now you can see this position is just dominating for white. Okay, so now rook to c4, a good move, trying to just improve the structure. And guys, the next move played by Petrosian is quite shocking for me. And can you guess what's the next move he played? Here he goes for the move knight to e1. And guys, that's a top engine move. The idea is to reroute this knight from knight to d3, because this knight on f3 was not doing anything special. And if you, let's suppose, go for knight to h4, trying to target the pawn on f5, but black will simply defend this by g6, and you can see after that black has to just bring this knight back to, white has to just bring this knight back to f3. And I also know some of you might be thinking, instead of knight to e1, yeah, why not the move knight to d2? And guys, the idea is very deep. First of all, the basic thing which everyone can guess is that there is not any good outpost for this knight. You know, this is already covered, and this is not good, this is not good. And the only square in which he can go is this b3 square. But let's suppose if black goes for rook to e7, idea is to just, basically he can now just try to exchange the rook, or maybe he can double the rook or target the pawn. So let's suppose if knight to b3, rook to c7, asking for rook exchange, but rook takes c7, knight takes c7, attacking the rook to a4, and hoping that everything was well protected. But guys, what about knight to d5, which creates pressure on b4 pawn, which obviously white can't defend. And let's suppose if g3, knight takes b4, and suddenly you can see black is back in the game due to this bad position of this knight. And guys, just imagine Petrosian calculated this variation, and after that he decided to go for the move which is knight to e1. And guys, that's really amazing. And now rook at e goes to d8, covering the d3 square so that white can't enter. And after all of this, you can see Petrosian successfully creates this passed pawn. And now rook to b6, he just tries to attack the pawn, but simply Petrosian gives a check, king to h7, and now Petrosian knows that he can't defend the pawn. Let's suppose if he pushes, Then simply rook to d6, attacking the pawn which can't defend, and if queen simply takes. So that's why instead of wasting time on the pawn, after king to h7 he just goes for knight to c2, improving the position of his knight. And Sherwin just captured the pawn, b5, rook to b6, attacking the pawn, but knight to a3, he just defends. Rook to b7, rook to c6, preparing to push the pawn. So to stop this, knight to d4, attacking both. So that's why rook to c5, f4. Okay, rook to d5, attacking the knight, but knight to c6, knight to c4, and you can see Petrosian is going to push the pawn further. King to g6, b6, king to f6, and you can see black is just trying to get closer so that he can stop the pawn, but this is not possible. King to e7, rook to a5, and you can see what's coming next. So that's why he just gets closer. Rook to a7, asking for rook exchange, knight to d8, and in this position the final move by Petrosian is knight to a5, and in this position James Sherwin resigned, because let's suppose if black goes for king to c8, simply knight takes b7, knight takes b7, rook to a8 check, king to d7, rook to g8 targeting the pawn, but g6, but simply rook to f8, king to c6, rook takes f7, king takes b6, and finally rook takes c4. And clearly you can see white is 2 pawns up, and with a rook which are enough to destroy the black position. What an amazing display of positional play by Petrosian. Like this video and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.